Let's overanalyze the event of Zelda learning an echo, because I'm a Zelda nerd. Echoes of Wisdom is a mix of both modern and traditional Zelda, with a unique mechanic as central gameplay. In the game, the player is able to create copies of previously encountered objects or enemies, called echoes. But how exactly does the learning of creating an echo work? That's the topic of this video. I think it's intuitively clear to most players, but let's analyze what happens here in this scene, and what happens when an echo is created. We see Zelda approaching the table, which is surrounded by small, floating golden triangles. She then points the tri-rod in the direction of the table, while the rod's tip starts glowing in a golden color. The golden triangles surrounding the table start floating towards the tip of the tri-rod and vanish when they reach the rod. After a short period of time, Zelda lifts the tri-rod and puts it away. She then looks upwards, with an image of the table appearing above her, surrounded by golden light. The golden triangles around the table have disappeared. Yeah, okay Medley, we all knew that. But what's actually new about your video? Well, I propose the following theory. Each small triangle floating around the object records the exact molecular position of said object in its respective area, and this information is sent to the tri-rod when it receives the triangles. I hope it's logical that it isn't Zelda who learns how this table is structured, but rather the tri-rod gets a structural plan, either directly or through the knowledge of the tries. Zelda only learns that she can create an echo of this particular object. It's important for this theory to talk more about the floating little triangles around the learnable object. As you all know, they indicate that an object is suitable to be learned by Zelda as an echo. However, the triangles aren't static, but spinning around, floating upwards, vanishing, and appearing. My theory is that they store information about where each molecule of that object, a table in this case, is located at the time of Zelda learning the echo. And when they reach the tri-rod, they send this information to the tri-rod, which then creates a plan of the learned object. And every time Zelda uses the tri-rod to create an echo, this plan previously given to the tri-rod by the triangles is read and replicated. In other words, the triangles pass through different information when floating around, and pass it on to the tri-rod when Zelda activates it. To explain my theory in a better way, I've tried to illustrate my idea. Here's the situation right before Zelda learns a new echo, in this case of a table. I've marked a triangle for better understanding. Let's call it Triangle 1. It floats around the echoable object. Then Triangle 1 disappears, and Triangle 2 floats from below, while Triangle 1 reappears somewhere else around the object. In both cases, the triangles analyze the molecular structure of parts of the table around them. The triangles have gaps of space between them, so in order for every molecule the table is made of to be recorded, let's say they have an informational field around them, where they still store the exact position of the molecules near them. This information is then stored into the triangles, which the tri-rod can then use and refer to after sucking up the triangles to construct an echo. As you probably have noticed, the triangles are constantly moving around. This means that the molecular data obtained from parts of the table near the triangles are constantly updated, and the data stored in the triangles is constantly changing. While doing research for this video, I noticed there were less triangles visible around the table than I initially thought when having the idea. The echoable object wasn't surrounded by as many small golden triangles all the time as I initially thought before reviewing the footage. But my whole theory rested on the premise that the table was constantly molecularly analyzed from every angle. However, notice that when Zelda uses the tri-rod to learn a new echo and holds it in the direction of the table, previously invisible triangles are appearing around the table and move towards the tri-rod. This indicates to me that there might be more triangles around an object than initially visible, so my theory still has some merit, I think. Also, the tri-rod has to somehow obtain the necessary information about an echoable object in order to recreate it. Notice how golden triangles also reappear when creating an echo. My theory also works for learning the echo of monsters, since we once again see small golden triangles floating around their essence, platonic idea, whatever that entity is. Okay, that's fine and all, but does hold my theory true for the other tries, or even null? Since they too are capable of creating echoes. Let's look at the tries first. Since the tries are connected to the Triforce by name, color, and the little triangles appearing over echoable objects and behind Tri the companion, and since the Triforce is an artifact created by the three golden goddesses who also physically created the entire world, it makes sense that the tries automatically have a concept of the molecular structure of all objects the world is made of. I also think it's definitely not too far-fetched to say that the triangles floating around a learnable echo have a connection to the golden goddesses themselves. Now, what about null? Null has absorbed tries, so it has the power to create echoes. However, I think that null first needs to somewhat physically reach the entity to learn it. This can be achieved either by null coming close to the object, or to have it being swallowed by the rifts. We even see this play out directly, with null having to grab Zelda, and only afterwards being able to create an echo of her. This thought brought me to the interesting idea that null stumbled on the remains of Ganon and absorbed the information of their molecular structure, being able to create an echo of Ganon. I hope to have presented a logical theory on how Zelda, or rather the Tri-Rod, is learning echoes. It's always fun to think about Zelda theories and how unexplained things connect through the games. That's all I had to say about this topic. Stay tuned for my next video.